So welcome to this top 10.1 features of Windows 8.1. Now some of these are items completely new to Windows 8.1. Some of them are things that have just been refined a little bit from Windows 8 where they were first introduced. I'm an 11-time Microsoft MVP. I still run ntfact.com, though it now goes to a different sort of URL. I'm a senior contributor editor for Windows IT Pro magazine. My latest book that's available is Microsoft Virtualization Secrets, but I'm actually currently writing Mastering Windows Server 2012 R2 HyperV with System Center and Windows Azure. I speak a lot at the industry events. I have a blog that I really use just to say, hey, I've got this new video available or this article available. And there's my YouTube channel. I also running the John Savile's Masterclass, and these take different guises. One of them is a 10 half-day online event, but I also do 1 2-day in-person events at major cities around the US. Now, before I even start looking at the top 10, let's actually say my lock environment for Windows 8.1. And this is what I now get. Instead of it just being a static page, it actually acts as a kind of photo frame. It's doing a slideshow of pictures I've told it. This could be from SkyDrive, it could be a local folder. And it's not just showing a static image, it's rotating, it zooms in, it can combine them in different ways on the screen. It's also showing me information. So it could show me emails I've got. You can see here I've got detailed information on the weather. I selected the weather app to be able to show me detailed information on that lock screen. You can see sometimes it actually shows multiple pictures on the screen at the same time. And so you have your device out, it's locked, and hey, you want to take a picture. What I can actually now do is I can select the top and swipe down, and it goes straight into this camera mode. So you can see here, I'm waving hello. So it just gives you this faster access to the camera without actually having to go and log in first. You can kind of see bits of my office now. But I can now jump and say I actually want to unlock the machine. And this is the whole picture password. And then I would just go ahead and log in. So let's actually look at, so what do I think are those first top 10? So the start screen. And you may say, well, that's very interesting. That got a lot of bad press. And really, I think it got a lot of bad press just because it was different. People felt it was this complete change, and it was a big change from the start menu. But if you actually take a step back, if you take the time to organize the start screen, it's actually a very friendly environment. If I think back to my start menu, I would click the start button, then I would have to navigate to a particular group, and then expand that group, and then find my icon. And my whole focus is on the start menu when I was using it. It's not like I was still looking at other things on the screen at the same time. With the start screen, I just get there very quickly, and as long as, again, you keep it organized, and that's the key part, I keep that organized, well, then I can find my apps, launch them very, very quickly. So again, I jump over here, and here's my start screen, and I can roam around, I can see, and you'll notice the background's now different. So one of the changes, if I go into my sort of settings and my personalize, there were built-in backgrounds, and some of them are animated. So it's actually going to rotate and move as it's running. But I can now say, hey, I actually want to show my main desktop background as my start screen. I have more flexibility in my colors, you can see on this right-hand side. So it's a lot more personalizable. And by actually having it use the desktop background, it's actually a lot less jarring when I move between the desktop and the start screen. You'll notice I have these different size tiles now. You have this new sort of look at the weather. If I select that, I can now see I've got this resize. I can make it a large, a wide, a medium, a small. You'll notice over here, let me just turn that one off. This is small. So now I have small, medium, wide, large. I have this different flexibility in the size of my icons. One of the problems that used to happen is you would accidentally just go ahead and rearrange the screen. We don't do that now. Now I actually have to select customize before I actually can start moving the things around. And the cool thing is I can actually go and select multiple ones at once. And I could now move them as an entire group. I can now name the groups without having to do that zoomy outy thing and then select before I could name it. So now I can just name it from within here. I can still rearrange and move them around, whatever I want to do, but it's just a bit more friendly. I'm not going to accidentally give it to your kid and they've rearranged all your icons. That's not going to happen anymore. So it's just a generally friendlier environment. Another nice thing that happens now is to sort of avoid that start screen pollution was in the past when you installed anything, its icon would just get added to the start screen. That doesn't happen anymore. So by default now, if I just zoom up, just flip up the screen, I can see all the apps that are actually installed. And this is where they'll go. And notice I have different ordering options. So I'm going to say by date installed. So if I do add something new, then I can go in and I can say, hey, yeah, pin this to the start screen or pin it to the taskbar. I have that flexibility now, rather than it just automatically going on my start screen. I can order it by the most used, by category, by name. I can kind of zoom, pinch in to show me all the ones starting with certain letters. So it actually makes it very nice. Last week, earlier this month, most used. It's just a great, very fluid interface. And of course, even without all of this stuff, even if I was actually just back on my main start screen, I can just start typing. So if I have a keyboard there and I want to run Word, well, I just start typing in Word and there it's found it for me. I don't have to do anything else. Hey, there's Word, enter, and that's going to go ahead and launch and I'm good to go. So very easy to actually get into these things. So let's jump back to the deck. There's also the control panel has been updated in Windows 8.1. So there was a lot I could do with sort of this modern change PC settings, but it's really been expanded now to really let me do almost anything. So let's jump back into that environment again. I'm going to flip and do my settings, change PC settings. And I now have these different groups of options, so PC and devices. I select it, and I have all these different categories available to me. Go back, look at my accounts. SkyDrive integration. And again, this is a lot more embedded with SkyDrive now. See my camera roll, what do I want to sync? So I've got my start screen now actually can sync through SkyDrive. A lot of flexibility in what I do and don't want to sync with SkyDrive. Privacy, etc. Almost everything you want can actually now be synchronized through SkyDrive and actually controlled through that new modern change PC settings. I can still get to the desktop control panel, it's still there. There's just less times now I would need to use it. And that's a key feature. Yes, through a touch interface I can do more in Windows 8.1, but I'm not losing anything if I'm a keyboard and mouse user. My main desktop, I don't have touch on most of the displays. I'm using keyboard and mouse. I still find it a great environment. So it's just about having the choice. If you have a touch-centric device, fantastic. You can do more with it. But it's not taking away anything from the keyboard and the mouse experience. One of the cool things you can actually in Windows 8.1 is actually export out that start screen layout. So this is a PowerShell command here. This export start layout as XML path. And what that now enables me to do is it's going to give me an XML file, and then I can actually use group policy through user configuration, administrative templates. It's a start menu and taskbar, and it's a start screen layout policy, which you can see here. I point it to that XML file, and then I can actually automatically configure those users with that start screen. So I would create a machine that I want everyone's start screen to look like, and then they would get that when I deploy it via this group policy. Now there are some other features in Windows 8.1. There's something called assigned access. So I jump to my Windows box, and I'll go back to those settings, change PCs, accounts. So one of the things you can do is you can actually go in, and you can see you can set up an account for assigned access. So what this enables me to do is I add an account, and basically at this point I select the app that account would be allowed to access. So you wouldn't be able to access anything else. Think of it almost like a kiosk mode or machine in a library or some test-taking application machine. That account would only be able to access that one application I select in this screen. So it's really locking it down. Yes, there is a start button. That was obviously a huge area of contention in Windows 8. There was no start button. So you can see it down. Let me just open up this screen. You can see it in this bottom left corner. Obviously, it kind of came up anyway in Windows 8 if you move the cursor to the bottom left corner, but that was not enough. So again, if I move my mouse down, it now glows, and you can see it there. And I can click it, and it opens the start screen. So there we go. It just is, it's more obvious, I guess is the point there. I can also right-click on it, and it kind of brings up that power menu, which again was there previously. If I actually unselect that, if I do the Win X, it opens up that power. And I can get to some of the key tools. Now, one interesting point is, especially right-click on my taskbar and do properties, I can do some configurations in here. My navigation options. So you saw there was a command prompt. If I'm more of a PowerShell person, I can select this. So now what happens when I sort of right-click or Win X, it now shows me Windows PowerShell admin instead of command prompt. So if you're really diving into the PowerShell, you can change that. I can also select to say, do you know what? I'm not that start screen person. I want to start directly into the desktop. So instead of going to the start screen, boot straight into the desktop. I can have it so the start screen will display on a certain display I'm selecting, and still, for example, I could go to the desktop on another display and keep running a modern application on another display. So again, that's a change. I can actually run 4 modern applications at once, depending on the resolution. Now, I can't on this system because it's just not a big enough resolution. But on my main displays on my desktop, I can actually run 4 Windows Store modern applications side by side. So I'm not limited to 2 anymore. And the other big change is you don't really have this idea that one is pinned in this tiny space. But I'm going to talk about that more a bit later. So I can boot to the desktop. It can stay open. So feature 2 is SkyDrive, or whatever that new name will end up being. So Windows 8 did have a SkyDrive modern application, but it didn't really integrate with the operating system. It didn't allow caching. So I couldn't say, hey, these files keep available even when I'm offline. There was a separate SkyDrive application that was independent of that modern application. Now that's changed in Windows 8.1. SkyDrive is now very integrated with the operating system. And let me just jump over to actually show you this. So here I can actually go ahead and open Explorer. And you'll see my SkyDrive. And for example, if I right click on my documents, you can see I have the make available online only. That's because this is currently configured to be cached. Another folder that maybe I don't cache gives me the option to actually make it available offline. And that's a consistent experience with what I would see. Oh, didn't want to do that. With the modern application. It's now using the same caching, the same configuration. So SkyDrive is now very, very integrated in with the operating system. It's got a very efficient syncing engine. And it's actually used throughout the operating system. So again, if I go to the settings, that SkyDrive now it shows me information about my SkyDrive account. I can save to SkyDrive by default, my camera roll, what I actually want to go and sync up when I take pictures. What do I want to sync with SkyDrive? And I can really sync a lot of things. How do I want to handle it if I'm on a metered connection? I'm on a 3G or something. How am I going to handle the different levels of synchronization, how I should use the bandwidth. So a lot of flexibility in that. So if you're not a SkyDrive user today, I'd really urge to take another look at it in 8.1 because I'm really finding it valuable. It's a key part of what I use today now. Modern applications. And this is an interesting one because different people really do or don't like them. In a multi-monitor display, I'll be honest, I don't find myself making a huge use of them. But it has got more flexible. And when I'm using my sort of touch devices like my Surface Pro, I mean, they're fantastic in those environments. They're fully immersive. I'm not wasting a lot of my screen estate on Chrome sort of things that I really don't need on screen. But they're now a lot more flexible in terms of how I can actually lay them out on the screen. So let's go ahead and jump over. So this is my Surface Pro, which I'm sort of screen capturing here. And I already launched the store. So you can see the store there. And maybe I'm going to launch the weather. And maybe I'll also launch the stock market. And obviously I can screen this way out, see all the apps I've currently got open. And if you remember in the past, I could have one modern application on the screen. I could pin another one to sort of a tiny portion on one side. Well now, let's say I want weather on as well. Notice it's now split in half. I can change how much of the screen, and when I get to a certain point, I get different views of the application. So it can control how much I can or can't pin it. And again, if I had a bigger resolution, I could actually pin like 3 or 4 applications. So let's say I want to try and also get on the store. And what it's going to do is it's going to say, which one do I want to go to? I can just say, hey, I'll put it on that side. If I just click one, like weather, it's kind of hovering in the middle. It doesn't know which side to go. So I say, well, go on that side. So that's how I can now run those modern applications at the same time, and I have more flexible configurations. On the same thread, modern applications will actually now update in the background. I don't have to manually go and check. They're just going to download and update behind me. But the cool thing, now I actually can synchronize the start screen between my different machines. It will know which modern applications I've bought or used on other machines. So here's another Windows 8.1 machine logged on as the same account. So it's logged on as me as well, a live ID. Now notice these little download arrows I have. So what these mean is, hey, you had this modern application installed on another machine. You don't have it on this one yet. Now in the preview, it automatically downloaded them. And I think that got a lot of negative press because let's say you had that Halo Spartan Assault, which is a gigabyte. It just started pulling down a gigabyte and installing it. So now what I do, if I actually want that app, I'll click on it. And now what I'll see is a little progress. It will actually start downloading that application and then making it locally available. So it's maintaining the space. There we can see it's now downloading it and going to install it. It's maintaining the position on the start screen of those modern applications, making it easy for me if I want to install them, but it's not just pulling it down automatically. It's giving me more choice in how that actually functions in the Windows 8.1 environment. And they did update a lot of the applications. I mean, there were some cool things done. There was a nice cooking application, for example. I'm a terrible cook. But they've done some neat updates to the mail, the calendar, the Internet Explorer. There were some gesture capabilities. Now, I can't really demo this, but let me just see if I can find the application. I think it was cooking. Nope. Food, maybe? Food and drink. There we go. So you launch this food and drink application. And I can just start typing for a certain food. Sure, lasagna. That sounds good. And the idea here is, you'll notice down the bottom, it's actually saying this hands-free mode. So this is if I want to cook the thing. So I can click this hands-free mode and say, yep, you can use my webcam. So now what's actually happening, I'm not going to press the screen or anything. It's going to show me the recipe, the steps of the screen. Notice it wants me to slide my hand. So I'm now sliding my hand across the webcam. And it's moving between, I'm going backwards. I'm swiping my hand in the opposite direction. So I'm not touching anything. This is just waving my hand in front of the screen. So all that cheese sauce and flour, I have no idea what goes in lasagna. But whatever it would be covering my hands that I don't want to touch my nice touch screen with is now separate. So I'm going to turn that touch screen off and close that down because I don't ever actually intend to cook a lasagna. But there's been big changes to really just make it more friendly and more interactive. So again, lots of effort, lots more applications. The Windows Store actually went through a redesign. It is friendlier now. It's easier to find the applications. And again, they're going to automatically update in the background. I'll close that down. So I want to talk about security, everyone's favorite topic. And really, passwords suck. And there were some great studies done that basically found there were 10,000 passwords in the world that make up over 98% of all the passwords actually used. So what that means is no matter how complex that password is, If it's one of those 10,000, it's broken in a couple of seconds. And generally, people use the same password over their social sites, their cinema site, their corporate account, their banking account. They use the same one. So if it's broke once, there's a good chance you're broken everywhere. And the challenge we find is a lot of companies assume they're not going to be a target for attack. They're not a huge Exxon or a Bank of America or Microsoft or an Apple. They're just a smaller company. And kind of the opposite is true. A lot of what we see these days is, it's not just script kiddies. These people download a script of a hack and they're running it. These organized crimes, these aggressive governments are attacking what's known as the supply chain. The smaller companies that make things or do things for these bigger companies but have very important details. If I can go and break into some supply chain that, I don't know, company working on the Xbox One, well, if I get all their details, I may now know, hey, look, these are the specifications of it. These are the details. I mean, that's a huge issue. So security really is a challenge for every company. And the goal is to get rid of passwords. Now, we saw in Windows 8, we had the picture password. So the picture password, the PIN, they're great for those touch devices. And the way these things work is they're actually stored, your main credential is stored in a local vault on your machine. And then that picture password, that PIN unlocks the vault. So that picture password, that PIN, it's not stored in Active Directory, it's not stored in Live, it's local to that machine. And it's kind of just like your secret little code to unlock a lockbox on the machine, which has your real credential. Now, the goal is to move away even from those, and biometrics is a huge one. And in Windows 8.1, biometrics really is right up there at the front of all of the security mechanisms as a key way to interact. And again, it's exactly the same thing as the picture password, the PIN. Your fingerprint is not stored in Active Directory. It's being used to unlock a vault on your local machine that stores your credential. So it's not going up to some central place where everyone now has a copy of your fingerprint. Now, it's important to realize there's a certain amount of entropy in your fingerprint. I.e., just because you have a fingerprint unlock, it doesn't mean that machine now has your complete fingerprint. It has details of your fingerprint enough that it can tell, hey, yep, I can now tell that is the same finger. I'm going to unlock that vault. Even if it was stored centrally, it doesn't mean your fingerprint is stored centrally. It's enough detail that it can tell, hey, yes, from this algorithm, I can tell that finger matches this hash type value. And obviously, I know the iPhone right now has got the fingerprint. There's this huge thing about fingerprints. I don't know the details of how they do it. I would imagine they're doing something pretty similar. I doubt they're having a central store of everyone's passwords either. But certainly in Windows 8.1, it does not. That fingerprint you're going to use is only used and stored locally on that particular machine to unlock that vault, which then has your live ID or corporate credential, whatever, to actually go and authenticate to other services. And there's some cool stuff they're doing with these touch sensors, like liveness awareness. So it's scanning not just the surface, but actually now checking for blood flow, the liveness of the cells, etc. And I want to actually just demo this quickly. So I'm back on my Windows 8, and what I want to add, go to my change PC settings, go to my accounts, sign in options. I want to set up fingerprint. So I'm going to say add. So it's firstly going to ask for my normal credential to make sure I really am, I didn't just leave my box for a second. Okay, so I'm going to scan the same finger once. Twice, 3, 4 times. So it's the same finger. So it's just basically taking multiple captures of the same finger. So I'm done. Click finish. So I've now got the finger, and I can add additional digits. So I can do add another, add another, add another. But right now it's one finger. So that was the same finger I scanned, I think, 7 times there. So now if I go to the start screen, I'm going to lock my machine. To unlock, I'm just going to put my finger on the fingerprint sensor, and it unlocked me. So I didn't type in didn't do my picture password, didn't do anything else. I just put my finger on my sensor, and it unlocked. I could do exactly the same thing now in the Windows Store. So if there was some app, I need to stop doing this demo too much to get having to buy applications all the time. But if there was some application that looked really good that I wanted to buy, not something cheap. Tell what we buy, something my kids are like. So I buy Rayman Jungle Run. And I'm going to hit buy. Let's hit confirm. Notice now it's saying, hey, I can type in my password, or I can just do my fingerprint. So now if I just put my fingerprint on my sensor, bang. I just bought what hopefully is not a sucky game. It's got 4 stars, so that will hopefully work out quite well for me. And that's now how integrated. Now right now I'm using a Verify fingerprint sensor. So I need a fingerprint sensor that's sort of certified for Windows 7 or Windows 8. It means it supports the right requirements for the sensoring. If I actually go and look at Device Manager, I didn't have to install any drivers for this device at all. You can see I have a biometric device. And the important part is it shows as WBF, because that's actually using the WBF framework to actually use this fingerprinting. So right now I have an external one, it's connected via USB just so I can demo this. The goal will be these fingerprint sensors will be, for example, in the bezel. It's a great, I have Rayman Jungle Run now. They'll be in the bezel of your devices. So when I hold my device, it will automatically unlock. I won't have to do anything. So password, fingerprint is one part. But think virtual smart cards. So when we think of security, there's something I know, something I have, something I am. So the something I know is a password. And we're kind of wanting to move away from that. There's a something I am. So something I am is my fingerprint. And I will mention quickly, people keep asking about what about using retina? What about voice? What about facial scanning? So the challenge with those technologies, so retina for example, it's not that user friendly every time I want to log in to stick my face 2 inches away from my monitor. Facial recognition is not that precise right now that I think would be used in a corporate environment or for higher security. To log on to Xbox Live, I'm willing to, you know what, if someone else looked a bit like me and logged onto my Xbox account, hey, they're going to get me some achievements that I didn't earn. I'm probably okay with that. Getting access to all my files and my data, that's a bit more strict. I think there's still developments before things like facial recognition are going to be used. But let's take away, let's not be saying I am. What about saying I have? So smart cards are used in a lot of environments. And in Windows 8.1, we have virtual smart cards. And what it's actually doing is it's leveraging the trusted platform module, so the TPM in your machine, and now actually creates a virtual smart card using the TPM. And this meets the requirements of a smart card. So it's non-exportable, it's isolated cryptography, and it has anti-hammering. So I can't just keep trying to guess what pin it might be. And actually Windows 8.1 enforces its own anti-hammering because TPMs actually can do things a little bit differently. So to make it uniform, behave the same way, there's actually some software implementation of the anti-hammering. But I can now do virtual smart cards. So the something I have is actually my tablet. My TPM-enabled tablet becomes my virtual smart card. There's things like Secure Boot built into Windows 8.1, and that was there in Windows 8 as well. The idea that when it's the transition from the BIOS or UEFI, as actually is the requirement, so the hardware's sort of initial startup operating system, there was a secure handoff between that hardware and Windows 8.1. There isn't some malware got in the middle and it's maybe capturing keystrokes, intercepting things. So I know I have a secure environment. Integrated search. So I think the search is fantastic. So Windows 8, the search was everywhere, but it was limited based on whatever app you were currently in. In Windows 8.1, the search is very much universal. And what it's going to do is it's going to integrate with Bing and Wikipedia and show you very interesting things. And it's also going to find me stuff on my local machine. So just go in here. And for example, I could just start typing something. So I'll start typing Marilyn Monroe. Now I don't have anything on my machine. Now let's say I was typing something different like Windows. So it's going to find me applications on my machine. It will then start finding me documents that have Windows on my machine, then the web results on my machine. So it's searching everywhere, or I could change that. Just settings, just files, just web. I can control what it's doing. But let's go back to my Marilyn. Oh, if I could type. My Marilyn Monroe. Now what it found was some documents, because obviously I used that as an example. No idea why I have an EMC Corporation document, Marilyn Monroe in it. But look, it's got some nice information to start off with. Information. It's got videos, movies they were in, songs, information from Wikipedia, official websites, thumbprints of those websites. A very, very rich searching experience. So not just some basic bit of text, but it's actually contextual to what I'm searching for in how it displays the information. So search is really great in Windows 8.1. And I can control it. There's group policies to narrow down where it searches if I want to. Work folders and workplace joins. These are interesting technologies. We live in this bring your own device world. And if a machine is corporate joined, then I can access my home folders, my corporate applications, no problem. Imagine it's not a corporate asset. Imagine it's my personal machine. But you know what? I would still like to access my home drive. So Work Folders enables user data synchronization to a Windows 2012 R2 file server. And I can only synchronize one folder. And there's also going to be clients for Windows 7 and iOS shortly after general availability. And again, this is going to synchronize a single folder. So, well, and all the subfolders, but I can only do one. So I would select, for example, my home folder. You would not use this as your first choice. If I could use SkyDrive Pro, I would use that. If it was a corporate asset, I would use folder redirection. This is purely an option where I can't use anything else, kind of that last ditch solution. If I just need to get access to my data on a non-corporate asset, I can use work folders. Workplace join is a similar concept to those bring your own devices. It enables a machine to not be joined to Active Directory. But what it does do is it does create an object in Active Directory. And there's now a kind of trust between AD and this machine. And what it now says is, well, look, because this machine is workplace joined, I'm going to let it access certain corporate applications and data. If ever I remove that workplace join, I'm going to lose access to those applications and data again. So it's a way to securely give access to non-corporate assets. Boot performance. I mean, this was a Windows 8 change, but I still like to talk about it because you see these amazing things where I turn off a device and I turn it back on again and it literally turns on in like a second. So it's actually, let's risk everything. I'm going to do settings, power. I'm actually going to shut this machine down completely. So this is now turned off. I'm going to push the power button now because I just pushed it. So it's now detecting, it's going through sort of 1 second. Surface screen is now on the screen. You're not going to see it until it gets to the operating system. So this was from a cold boot, and now it's actually showing on mine. There we go. So that was a, 5 seconds maybe? So that wasn't just in sleep mode. That was a full boot of the operating system. I did a shutdown, and I booted on my Surface Pro in about 5 seconds. Now the reason I can do that is because if you think about a typical startup, so there's the BIOS, and the BIOS was really slow, and the Surface Pro and most modern machines have got rid of the BIOS. They use UEFI, this Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, and that generally starts up in about a second or 2 seconds instead of 30 for the BIOS, so that gives me a big boost. But then the next pass is a lot of system initialization. It's loading drivers and services, the session 0. And generally that stuff does not change. It's the same every time I start Windows, but that system initialization takes a lot of time. So what Windows 8 did is when I shut down the machine, it actually hibernates that small part of the system, but that takes a long time to start. So when I start up, it just reads that from that hibernation file and then does a driver initialization and then initiates the user when they log on. And that's the other big change that enabled startup to be so fast. Instead of having to initialize every service, every driver, all the session zero stuff, when I shut down, it saves that. And the only time it will redo that is if a certain patch is applied, if I install new drivers, updates to the operating system, then it will go through a system initialization and it will be slower to boot. But in a normal environment, I'm going to get a much, much faster boot time with Windows 8.1. Storage spaces. I mean, I love this technology. So rather than show you my Surface, because it has one disk, that's really not very interesting. What I'm actually going to open up is Control Panel on my main desktop. I'm going to open up Storage Spaces. And what Storage Spaces does is it lets me, so I've got 2 on this machine, each of them have 2 disks in it. And I can basically pull them together, but I could add additional disks in. So the capacity is low. I could add in 2 more disks. I can just add and add and add to this. I can expand them very easily. If one disk died, it would automatically repair itself. So a very powerful capability in here. And I can do mirroring, there's parity. Now in Server 2012 R2, I can do tiering. I can mix hard disk drives with SSDs, so solid state drives. And it will look at which blocks are used the most and it will move the popular blocks into the SSD tier. That is not part of Windows 8.1. So that is a server feature, not Windows 8.1 feature. But definitely recommend using this. It's a fantastic, and I could use USB external drives. I could sort of chain them together on my desktop and store my media on that. So a great technology. Client HyperV. So it's included in Windows 8 client. It's still included in Windows 8.1. And again, the new features in Server 2012 R2 really make their way into it as well. I think like the new Generation 2 virtual machines. So these UEFI based virtual machines are now available. And it's the same format as Windows Server 2012 R2. So I can create a VM on my client HyperV, test it, everything else. And it will work on my Windows Server 2012 R2 HyperV environment. And all the same scalability. Now, if you have a laptop with 64 CPUs and a terabyte of RAM, or even a desktop, I'm very jealous. But I could have the same scalability on the client HyperV as I do on the server. Now, it's not supporting Fiber Channel or SOIOV. I don't think anyone would have a desktop that has those capabilities. You're not doing live migration or Hyper-V replica. But in terms of the scalability and most of the features, it's all there in the client Hyper-V. So that's great for dev test scenarios. And I want to talk just quickly about Windows RT. So there is going to be Windows RT 8.1. It's featuring those new modern applications. It's featuring the changes sort of in the 8.1 kernel. So again, improvements around performance, scalability, etc. And this is really an interesting option when I need different form factors. So longer battery lives, thinner devices. And by now you've probably heard of the Surface 2, which is Microsoft's own sort of Windows RT based 8.1 device. And it's thinner, longer battery life. Again, I don't want desktop applications. This is only modern applications, i.e. things I'm getting from the Windows Store. And they give you Office. So Microsoft can actually create applications that run on a desktop, but no one else can. There are other manufacturers making these. And it's just about that choice. If all I need to run in these modern applications and I want the smallest device with the longest battery life, look at the RT devices. And I kind of think of it the same. It's more of a consumption type device. Windows RT is great for checking your email, browsing the web, reading a book, running these consumption-based applications is fantastic. And because you do have the Office applications, I can even create documents and PowerPoints and Excel as Outlook on these things. So I can actually create content as well. But I can't run other types of desktop application. But certainly it's doing more and more with each new version. Now on the flip side, we have the new chips from sort of Intel that are getting even better battery life. I know the Surface Pro 2, which I've already got pre-ordered, that gets me hopefully like 7 hours of battery life. Now it's bigger than the Surface 2, the RT-based machines, but then I have the flexibility of running desktop apps as well. But it's about choice. What do you need? What is your price point? And that's going to help dictate. But the fact is, it's not just locked into, hey, I have to run Windows 8.1. If I only need a subset of the capability and mainly consumption or these thin devices, you have that choice. I just want to finish on MDOP. So that was my sort of 10.1. Now this is for enterprises, not for the users at home. But if I'm looking at running Windows 8.1 in the enterprise, I'm going to want to probably have MDOP, the Microsoft Desktop Optimization Pack. A lot of the features you think about enterprise, so BitLocker. BitLocker is there as part of Windows 8.1 in most of the versions now. But if I want an enterprise key recovery solution, that's Microsoft BitLocker Administration and Monitoring. That's part of MDOP. If I want what was the sysinternals ERD Commander, well, that was purchased by Microsoft. It's the Microsoft Diagnostics and Recovery Toolkit, DART. There was I can't remember the name of the company now. They had this great group policy solution. They were purchased. That's the Microsoft Advanced Group Policy Management. Application virtualization is AppV. It's part of MDOP. MedV, that's not a Windows 8 or 8.1 solution. So it's there for Windows 7. That is not going to run in Windows 8 or 8.1 because it relies on virtual PC, which doesn't run in Windows 8. Windows 8 is HyperV. User experience virtualization is a very interesting technology. Most people hate roaming profiles. If you recommend to use roaming profiles, they wonder why you hate them. What UEV is a technology that basically splits up the profile into its component parts. So the part of the profile that relates to Word, part of the profile that relates to Internet Explorer, part that relates to desktop. And it synchronizes as that application or component starts or stops as you log on or log off. So I can now float application components between a Windows 8 machine, a remote session host, VDI environment. One is a virtualized app, one is a locally installed application. And I don't even have to log out. I just open the application, make a change, close it, open it on another machine, and it will get those settings automatically. So it's kind of like this super beefed up profile roaming solution. That's part of MDOP. And so they're really my top 10.1 things. It's not saying it's the right, they're just the ones that I think are very interesting. I think there's been some great work. I think 8.1 is a refinement of 8. I think there was a lot of great things done, well, huge great things done actually in Vista. A lot of things around security, a lot of those key features were done in Vista, but there were some pain points around implementation. Windows 7 made great leaps to improve on those. Windows 8, exactly the same. 8.1, I think, is really refining what was done in those previous versions, but it's really making it a much prettier package, a lot more accessible. And I think from most people who have started to use it, they're saying fantastic things. I'm actually finding it a very good environment here. I use it on, like say, my Surface Pro. I use it on a 4-screen desktop setup. And I actually find it a lot quicker. The start screen, yes, it's a jolt at first. Keep it organized, keep it tidy. And the 8.1, the fact that it doesn't just stick every icon on the start screen, helps you keep it organized, helps you keep it neat, and just a lot more usable. But again, you're not losing any keyboard and mouse functionality in Windows 8 or 8.1. It's still there. It's not that you have to use touch. And again, on my main desktop, I have one monitor at the side that's a touch monitor for when I want to record things and demo, but I don't use it day to day at all. I use my keyboard and my mouse, and it's a great environment. So I hope this was useful. Hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll see you at another event soon.